Burning Issy, Melvin Burgess, Chapter 11. Iron decided I wasn't strong enough to carry on foot, so she paid a man to hire a pony, and I came to her house in fine style, my first time ever on horseback. Iron had a large cottage in over an acre of land, spotted around with little sheds and outhouses. Unlike Nat, she owned the land. As well as keeping pigs, chickens, ducks and geese, she even grazed a cow on her neighbour's field. The cottage was a stone building, another sign she was well off. The stone undressed and held together by thick, coarsely smeared mortar, but the walls were thick, solid and dry. She even had a little chimney poking out of the roof, and so inside wasn't filled with the smoke all the time as ours was. Iron's house had 3 rooms for her and a loft where we slept, which was packed from floors to eaves with bales of cloth. There were various lean-tos added on. Many of these, as well as the little outhouses, were filled with cloth as well. It seemed that Thomas Starr had been a cloth merchant, and Iron had kept up the business. She did all the buying and selling, and there was a man, Tolly, who ran the place while she was away and helped her while she was at home. There was a boy, Mark, to run errands. She also paid a girl to look after the garden and the animals and do the housework. Iron didn't have to lift a finger if she didn't want to. I could never make up my mind whether she was lazy or busy, because she would spend some days in bed till lunchtime and others at dawn working until dusk. She made it clear right from the start that she expected me to work for my keep. Her girl Joan was not friendly at all, and I found out why a couple of mornings later when Iron woke me up at 4 to milk the cow and sheep. I asked her where Joan was. "Well, we don't need her so long as you're here," Iron replied. I felt sorry for Joan, although I later learned that Iron had good reason for getting rid of her. Taking over Joan's job made life at Iron's not much different from life at home. Sometimes when business was brisk, I'd help with the cloth, but most of my work was done in the garden. Iron's garden was like a green cloak laid on the side of a valley where she lived. You could see it for miles off, standing out against the dull winter grass of the pastures. I noticed it when we came down off the tops of our arrival, but when I actually got down to working on it, I realised how far ahead it was. In our little garden back in Pendle, we were just watching the first seeds come through and protecting delicate things from frost. Here I found myself planting out little seed sproutlings, picking leafy vegetables and watching first beans come into flower. The garden was a sheltered spot and it got the sun from the dusk till dawn, but even these advantages couldn't explain how she could grow things like peaches and melons, which I had only ever heard of before and were normally grown under glass in big houses of the rich. Things in the garden grew faster than I would have ever thought possible, and she would have lived off that 1 acre had she wanted to, but her main business was the cloth. She provided yarn to over 100 weavers, bought the finished cloth back from them and transported it on horseback every week to the Saturday market at Halifax. Every day weavers were coming and going with pieces of coarse woolen fabric balanced on their heads and shoulders to sell. Iron would get Mark to pour out some beer and sit in the garden to watch them haggle over the price. I heard complaints that she was stingy with her money. It seemed Iron was the only cloth merchant of the miles, and if she struck a hard bargain to the weavers, they had no choice but to take it. On the other hand, everyone agreed she was generous with loans or gifts of money if they fell sick. She was generous enough to me. Shortly after we arrived, she gave me a couple of silver coins and she said they were mine. I'd never seen so much money altogether. I wrapped it up in a scrap of cloth and hid it in my bundle. I planned to give it to Nat when I got back home. Iron had other interests as well as cloth. She was certainly a wise woman. She admitted that openly, People often came to see her for cures for their families and animals. She had a little hut in the garden where she took people to treat them. Once she asked me to come with her. "You have gifts too," she said, but I shook my head. The only gift I didn't want. It seemed safer that way. There are other mysteries about her that were not so easily explained. The one that troubled me most was the fact she disappeared every Thursday night from late evening until dawn the next day, and then spent all Friday morning in bed. I discovered that Tolly disappeared too. I knew that Thursdays was Witches' Day, the day they held their Sabbath in honour of the devil. But of course I did not believe in such a thing of Ian, and I tried to convince myself that she had a lover or another secret. Ian still refused to answer any of my questions. She insisted that I knew the answers myself, and that if she told me, I would never learn how to find things out for myself. "Not a single question will I answer," she told me, "but I will show you how to look when the time is right." That meant nothing to me, and I was beginning to start wondering if there were things she didn't want me to know when she gave me my first lesson. We spent the morning pulling out an old chicken shed that had not been used for some years. We heaped this up in the middle of the garden with some other rubbish and started a fire. The wood was damp, but even so, Ian quickly got up a good blaze. She stood watching the flames leap up in the air, and as I always felt uncomfortable near the fire, I felt the scars on my face beginning to itch, and I turned away. Ian took my hand. "Wait with me," she said. I pulled back. "You can go when you like, but there's something for you here." I let her lead me back to the fire. The flames jumped and fluttered. "Fire holds a secret for you," said Ian. "This is where you have to learn about yourself. This is where the answers to your questions lie, in the heart of the fire. Can you be brave?" I said, "I don't know. I don't feel brave." "I promise it won't hurt, but you will be frightened. I want to teach you how to look into the fire. Will you try?" Against my will, I nodded. She squeezed my hand. "Stay very still," she whispered. "I want you to look into the fire, right into the heart of the fire. It's all right. I'll hold you if you feel faint. Think nothing of it. Let your mind go quiet as if you were wanting to go to sleep." The flames pounding and beating in the air, the warmth on my face, her voice whispering inside me. I grew still and calm as if I were watching all this from a great distance. Gradually, garden, Iron, even the fire disappeared altogether, and I was in a warm, snug, dark place, safely tucked out of all harm's way. Only the beating flames in the air remained, regularly pulsing, throbbing, shaking the air. Then I became aware of a murmuring all around me and someone shouting my name. That warm bubble ruptured, someone grabbed hold of me, and I was tossed to and fro in the air. Then a ferocious blast of heat, a terrible searing, a blow of pain in my hands and my face, and there was a fire before me, a huge roaring fire that lunged into the sky. Someone held me in a solid grip before it. I tried to move my head, but could not. I tried to wiggle and scream, but every time I took a breath, a blast of hot air burned my throat. I was suffocating. I was burning alive. Far away there was a voice, a whisper speaking to me, telling me something. Desperately I turned to it. It was Iron. As I recognised her, I realised that this was only a dream, that it could not harm me, but it did not make the pain or the terror any less in that moment. She was telling me to be still, to stay dreaming, to remember the fire dream right through to its end. I tried to listen through the choking and the burning. "Open your eyes, Issy. See into the fire. Look. What do you see in the fire?" "I can't," I moaned, but I couldn't help myself. My eyes opened against my will. There was the face, and I screamed and screamed and screamed, and everything vanished suddenly. I was back in the garden, staggering away from the fire. I turned from the blaze and fell gasping into the ground. Immediately she was with me. She was there with me, holding me in her arms. There's a girl, Issy. Well done, well done. You're with me now. It's all right now, she said, cradling me in her arms. I dreamt, I panted. She shook her head. Not a dream, a memory. I touched the scars on my face. I had an accident. She shook her head again. Not just an accident. But I was only 2 years old. No one can remember that far back. You can, and you just showed it. Did you look, Issy? Did you see into the fire? A face. What face? I pushed her away and tried to stand up. I shook my head to shake the memory away. I can't remember. I always forget the face. You have to remember the face, Issy. You have to remember what happened that day. It's the only way for you now. She used to know. She used the words. It's the only way for you to know. She used the words to know with special emphasis, as if it was meant more in her mouth than normal. Is that what you want? I asked bitterly. I know how hard it is, but you must try, she insisted. Issy, you have great gifts. Gifts of healing, gifts of seeing. But they are trapped in that fire, and that's why it comes out all wrong. And that's when you touch your power, it comes out as harm. What you did to Demdike, what you've already done to me today. She rolled up her sleeve and showed me how her skin up her arm was bright red, burned. I stared at the wound and turned away. I never will, I said, I never will. I walked quickly away from the blaze. End of chapter 11.